In 1974, in a small German recording studio, a 33-year-old music producer named Frank Farian was trying to make a name for himself. He was not famous yet, and nobody in the music world really cared who he was. One night, he decided to record a disco song called Baby Do You Wanna Bump? But, instead of hiring singers, Frank did something unusual. He sang the deep male voice himself, and also recorded the high falsetto parts. Then, he released the song under a fake band name, Boney M. The song became a surprise hit in Belgium and the Netherlands. Excited by the success, Frank came up with a bold idea. He would find attractive dancers and performers who could go on stage and pretend to be Boney M while he kept doing all the real singing in the studio. It was a risky move, but it worked. Audiences believed they were watching a real band, when in truth, they were seeing an illusion. That was how Boney M was born, from one man's voice and a carefully built lie. What started as a shortcut would later become one of the most shocking stories in pop history. Frank began searching for people who could bring his band to life on television. He found Maisie Williams, a 24-year-old beauty queen from Montserrat, who had just won the Miss Black Beautiful contest. She was stunning and had stage presence, but Frank had no plans to use her voice. He hired her only for her looks and energy. Then came Bobby Farrell, a wild dancer from Aruba who could light up any stage with his moves. But again, Bobby never sang a single word on the records. Frank Farian did all the deep male vocals himself. The public believed Bobby was the voice behind hits like Daddy Cool and Ma Baker. But he was only lip-syncing to someone else's voice. Maisie and Bobby received payment for performing, but not for the records or royalties. They brought life to Frank's songs, but they never owned any part of them. Behind the glitter and disco lights, they were just employees in someone else's empire. Their faces were known around the world, yet their voices were never heard. Fame, for them, came without freedom or truth. Between 1976 and 1980, Boney M became one of the biggest names in disco. Songs like Daddy Cool, Sunny, Ma Baker, and Rivers of Babylon topped charts all over Europe and beyond. The group sold millions of records and performed in packed arenas. But behind the glamorous shows, the reality was dark. Frank Farian kept strict control over everything. The performers were under tough contracts. They were only paid for live appearances, not for recordings. Even when Boney M had 38 top 10 hits in Germany, Frank kept all the royalties for himself. When they toured the Soviet Union in 1978, the band performed under heavy government watch, as songs like Rasputin upset Russian officials. But what bothered the members more was how fake it all felt. They danced and smiled for millions, knowing none of it was truly theirs. In interviews, Maisie later said she felt humiliated watching herself perform songs she had never sung. Bobby, meanwhile, began to lose control of his life. He felt trapped in a role he couldn't escape. They were stars on stage, but puppets off it, controlled by contracts, lies, and a producer who saw them as replaceable parts of his machine. As fame grew, the cracks began to show. During one live performance in the late 1970s, a technical failure stopped the music playback while Bobby Farrell was still lip-syncing. The crowd saw him moving his lips while no sound came out. For a moment, the illusion broke. Journalists started asking questions, but management quickly covered it up. Inside the group, tension was rising. Marsha Barrett and Liz Mitchell, the two real singers, began feeling overshadowed. Their voices powered many of the biggest hits, but Farian's name was on everything. Even when Rivers of Babylon sold over 2 million copies in the UK. The original Jamaican writers were left uncredited until they sued. Money and fame were pouring in, but not for the people on stage. By 1981, Bobby Farrell had had enough. After years of pretending, he finally walked away, saying he couldn't live the lie anymore. But leaving didn't solve his problems. Legal agreements kept him tied to the Boney M brand, and Frank Farian quickly replaced him with another performer. The group began to fall apart, and the dream that had started with so much energy began to fade. By the mid-1980s, Boney M's success was collapsing. Their 1985 album I Dance failed to capture fans' hearts. Internal conflicts, lawsuits, and emotional burnout destroyed what was left of the group. Maisie Williams tried to start her own career, but Farian blocked her attempts, using contracts and legal pressure. Marsha Barrett suffered health problems, while Liz Mitchell battled depression. Each of them had given their youth to a project they never truly owned. They had brought joy to millions, yet were treated like background actors in their own story. Meanwhile, Farian continued to make money and controlled every use of the Boney M name. When a court finally ruled in 1990 that all original members could perform under the name, it was already too late. The magic of Boney M was gone. For Bobby Farrell, life after fame was even harder. He tried to perform solo and rebuild his career, but without real ownership or income, he struggled financially. The man who once danced in front of millions was now living in poverty. Far from the lights that once made him shine, Bobby Farrell's story became one of the saddest tales in pop history. After years of struggling, he had lost everything. He had no royalties, no rights, and no home of his own. In his later years, he lived with his family in the Netherlands, relying on government help. His daughter later said Frank Farian once offered him money, but only if he signed away the rest of his rights forever. Desperate, Bobby agreed. That one signature took away everything he had left. In 2010, Bobby traveled to Russia to perform Rasputin, one of Boney M's biggest hits. He had heart problems but refused to stop performing. The night after his show in St. Petersburg, hotel staff found him dead in his room. What shocked the world was that he died on December 30, 2010. The same date, and in the same city where the real Rasputin had died in 1916. Exactly 94 years earlier, fans saw it as eerie fate. The man who sang Russia's Greatest Love Machine had died in the same place as the man he sang about. Doctors later confirmed Bobby died of heart disease, worsened by years of stress and addiction. He was only 61. The world lost a performer who had given everything for a dream that was never really his. After Bobby's death, fans were outraged when they learned how little he had earned from Boney M's success. He died with more than $50,000 in debt, while Frank Farian had made tens of millions. Online, people called it one of the biggest injustices in music. Meanwhile, the surviving members tried to rebuild their lives. Liz Mitchell suffered a serious car accident in 2023, but continued performing once she recovered. Marsha Barrett fought 2 battles with cancer, first ovarian, then breast cancer, but survived with the support of her husband, Marcus James. Her story became one of strength and endurance. Maisie Williams spent years in court trying to protect her right to perform under the Boney M name. All of them had to fight to be recognized for the work they had done decades earlier. Despite the pain, they kept performing the music that had once defined their youth. The songs still brought joy to millions, even if the memories behind them carried heartbreak. For them, survival itself became an act of victory against the injustice they endured. In 2024, the man behind it all, Frank Farian, passed away at the age of 82. He had lived in Miami and had heart surgery 2 years earlier. In interviews, he often joked that he had a pig heart like Mick Jagger, but in truth, his health was failing. When he died, tributes poured in from around the world, praising his role as a creative genius. But for many, his legacy was mixed. To some, he was a brilliant producer who helped shape disco. To others, he was a symbol of exploitation and manipulation. When his will was revealed, it shocked fans his estate was worth over $100 million. Yet none of the original Boney M members or their families were included. The people who brought his music to life were completely left out. Liz Mitchell gave a polite but cold tribute, saying only that his music had brought joy to millions. No warm memories, no personal stories. It was a professional goodbye to a man who had controlled their lives. In the end, Frank Farian died the same way many said he had lived, alone, surrounded by silence, haunted by the ghosts of the people he had once used to build his empire. Today, the story of Boney M stands as both a celebration of disco and a warning about the dark side of fame. Their songs, Rivers of Babylon, Daddy Cool, Sunny, and Rasputin, still make people dance around the world. But behind every beat was a story of control, loss, and broken dreams. The band that brought joy to millions was built on deception. It showed how easily the music industry can take power away from artists, replacing talent with image and loyalty with contracts. Bobby Farrell's tragic death, the members' long struggles, and Frank Farian's lonely end-all tell the same story. That fame can be a beautiful illusion, but it often comes with a painful price. In the end, Boney M's music outlived the lies. People still dance, still sing, and still celebrate their sound. But those By the late 1980s, the world had changed. Disco was long gone, and new genres like pop, hip-hop, and electronic music ruled the airwaves. But the shadows of Frank Farian's old methods were about to reappear in an even bigger scandal. Before that, small cracks were already appearing in the story of Boney M. Former members began speaking publicly about what had really happened behind the scenes. Interviews with Maisie Williams and Bobby Farrell revealed that they hadn't sung on any of the original records. Journalists who had followed the band in the 1970s began rechecking old contracts and studio credits. Slowly, the truth started to surface. Frank Farian had used session singers for nearly everything, keeping the stage performers as faces only. Fans were shocked but not surprised. Many had already suspected lip-syncing during live shows, but what truly hurt people was realizing how deeply the deception went. It wasn't just a one-time trick, it was a system designed to hide the real artists. Frank had used talented voices like Liz Mitchell's and Marsha Barrett's, but buried their identities under a commercial image. The more people learned, the more they realized that fame in the music world wasn't always earned by talent. Sometimes it was built on lies and control. Yet even after the truth came out, the songs of Boney M remained loved. For millions, the music's happiness was too powerful to hate. But behind that joy, the performers carried the heavy weight of being silenced for decades. Frank Farian wasn't done. In 1988, he decided to repeat his old trick, but on a much bigger scale. He created another group called Milli Vanilli, fronted by two young good-looking dancers, Rob Pilatus and Fab Moore. Like Boney M, the two men never sang on their records. Frank hired studio vocalists to do all the singing, and paid Rob and Fab to perform and lip-sync on stage. The formula worked again. At first, Milli Vanilli's debut album, Girl You Know It's True, sold over 30 million copies worldwide. They won the Grammy Award for Best New Artist in 1990. Everywhere they went, crowds screamed their names. They lived in luxury, unaware that the same pattern that destroyed Boney M's truth was waiting for them too. Then, during a live performance in Connecticut, the backing track malfunctioned. The words "Girl, you know it's," "Girl, you know it's," repeated endlessly as the tape got stuck. Rob and Fab froze on stage. The audience realized they weren't singing. Within weeks, journalists discovered the full truth. Milli Vanilli was a fake band, and Frank Farian was behind it all. Under public pressure, Farian confessed that neither Rob nor Fab had sung a single note on their songs. It became one of the biggest scandals in music history. The Grammy they had won was taken back, the first and only time that ever happened. Rob Pilatus fell into deep depression and drug addiction, and in 1998, he died at just 32 years old. The Milli Vanilli disaster exposed Frank Farian's pattern to the world. What he had done secretly with Boney M was now undeniable.